Remember the days when you didn't have a PC? Well, I definitely do, because when I was younger, I was broke and had no job. So I used to go to the library with my mom, not to read books, but to play games on their computers. However, there was always one problem: a strict 1-hour time limit. And once that hour was up, they signed my ass out, and this would make my 8-year-old self crash out because I'd lose all my progress in slither.io. But now, that time limit is gone because I managed to get my hands on one of those exact PCs that you can find at my school library today for completely free. And in this video, I'm gonna show you how I transformed this library PC into a proper gaming machine. Since this computer cost me literally $0, you would be stupid to not expect it to be absolute trash. But let me tell you, these library PCs are a lot faster than you think. Even though it's only 7 by 1.5 by 7.2 inches, this thing is packing some crazy performance for the size, and for context, my current PC is about 41.81 times the size of this thing. But if I'm gonna be honest here, it's nowhere near 41.81 times the speed of this library computer. Because even though I got it for free, and I'll explain how in a second, you can't find this computer selling for any lower than $1,500. But that's enough talking. It's time to open this thing up and see what kind of specs we got inside this ThinkStation. It's sporting an Intel Core i7-12700T, a 12-core CPU that's about as fast as a regular 12th generation Core i7. This processor is a total powerhouse, and despite its low power consumption, it's going to be a key player in helping us push for 300 FPS in Fortnite. And you probably think that this computer would be too small to fit a graphics card, right? But think again, because inside this thing, we have an NVIDIA T400 4GB graphics card, and when I first opened it up, I definitely did not expect to see an entire graphics card. Remember, the entire PC is the same size as my hand. So I moved on with the challenge, plugged in the display cable and power cable, but just as I was expecting the usual Windows boot up screen, I was greeted with something completely unexpected: a map. It turns out that this wasn't just any library PC. It was one of those interactive maps you'd find at your closest mall, showing you where everything is. It still had the software running from Bankers Hall, the biggest mall in Calgary, and while it worked, it was definitely not what I thought I'd be dealing with today. So that brings up a huge question. How did I end up with a digital kiosk PC from a library? Although the ThinkStation P360 Tiny is the same model you typically find in libraries, it turns out that my specific P360 computer has a slightly different story behind it. If you remember from the intro, I didn't specifically say that I got this library PC straight from the library, and that's because I got it from the IT company where my dad works. His workplace repairs all kinds of tech from all types of companies: monitors, TVs, and in this case, computers. And sometimes, these companies don't take back their old equipment because they don't need it anymore, even when it's still in great condition. And this computer was one of those pieces of equipment that the mall no longer needed. And because this specific line of Lenovo Tiny PCs was discontinued a few years back, they couldn't resell it, so it was going straight to the landfill. And the sad reality is that normally these PCs just get thrown out, but my dad was fortunately able to sneak it out for me. Since it was just sitting around waiting to be disposed of, we lost track of where it came from. 9 times out of 10, you can figure out the origin of a PC just by looking at it. But the problem here is that these tiny PCs are super versatile and used in every field: architecture, finance, healthcare, you name it. But in this case, it was used as an interactive map for a mall, which nobody could have predicted. And now you might think that this wouldn't make the challenge any harder because it's still the same PC as the P360 Tinies at my local library, but because digital directories are being used by hundreds of people passing by every day, they have security measures that would stop me from accessing Windows, making the challenge infinitely harder. Because instead of being a library PC with infinite freedom, I'm locked behind this stupid map with no way to get past it. No matter which keys I pressed, this mini PC was still convinced that it was at the biggest mall in Calgary. With some quick thinking, I opened up Task Manager and tried to end the program displaying the map. But as expected, this thing was a bit too smart for that, and it just rebooted itself. However, this was still a huge step forward, because for a split second I saw a glimpse of Windows, which meant that the challenge was definitely possible. All I needed to do now was figure out how to permanently shut down the program and log in with my own account. And that's when I discovered that Ctrl-Alt-Delete worked perfectly fine. But since I'm stupid, I accidentally locked the computer, and that's when I noticed something really strange. The lock screen had a Cineplex logo. I thought to myself, why would a mall directory PC have a Cineplex lock screen? Well, if you've been paying attention, I did say that this was the biggest mall in Calgary. so of course they have pretty much everything, including a Cineplex. So I assume that this was originally used as a media engine at Cineplex to display their atrocious popcorn prices. The prices are getting so bad that they don't even show them anymore. Anyways, with all this history behind this computer, I wouldn't be surprised if it was also used as a library PC at some point. It's crazy how a single PC can be repurposed for so many different things. However, this PC did not want to be repurposed as my gaming test bench because even with an internet connection, I was unable to switch the Microsoft account from Player to my own account. So I guess I already have to use my last resort, resetting the entire computer. So I restarted my PC to reset it, and we made it to the Windows 10 setup with no issues at all. Next, I downloaded everything I needed to turn this P360 into a proper gaming PC. I then installed all 3 of the Tomb Raider reboot games, but there was something seriously wrong with Epic Games. I tried running the installer multiple times, and every single time, it would just break. You can even see that the shortcut is on my PC for a split second and then disappears. So I guess I'll worry about that later, but there's one last thing we need to download before we can game on this thing, and that's the driver. So I just downloaded the latest drivers for the NVIDIA T400, restarted the PC, and it's finally time to see how it performs in some video games. Now I came into this challenge expecting pretty terrible numbers, and I'm saying this because I was greatly surprised by the results we got at the end. While I was waiting for the drivers to download, I was curious as to how well this GPU would perform in gaming because it's a super small, super low power workstation GPU. So I opened up Tomb Raider 2013, a huge graphical achievement in its day, and started the benchmark pretty chill at 1080p normal settings. But I could just tell that it was running over 100 FPS just by looking at it, so I immediately cranked it up to the ultimate preset because I was confident that this mini PC could handle it. But it looks like I was wrong. It's definitely playable, but it's probably not worth cranking it up to ultimate settings when high settings look very similar and give you more FPS. So Tomb Raider 2013 was pretty light work, so let's move on to the next game in the series, Rise of the Tomb Raider, which I would argue is the best game in the series. It seemed like the main menu was a bit laggy at 1080p high settings though, so I thought we would start by keeping it chill at medium settings. And it wasn't too big of a deal because medium settings in Rise look about the same as ultra settings in 2013. I thought the benchmark was going pretty smoothly, but we actually ended up with barely 35 FPS, which might sound fine, but back in the day, this game gave me so much trouble when I was playing on 45 FPS on integrated graphics at the hardest difficulty. So it's playable in the early game for sure, not so much in the end though. And before we get into some competitive games, we'll wrap up the single player game benchmarks with the final game in the trilogy. Following the trend of dropping the graphics preset by 1 level, Shadow of the Tomb Raider still looked pretty decent to me, even at low settings, and even the numbers were decent too, ending off at 38 FPS, which I think is still pretty good for what it is. But being good for what it is still pretty underwhelming. You could get better FPS than this by slapping a $100 graphics card in a Dell Optiplex. But what a Dell Optiplex can't do better than this PC is competitive gaming, because the i7-12700T in this tiny PC crushes esports titles. But then I remembered that Epic Games Launcher wasn't working, and without Epic Games, I won't be able to install some of the biggest esports games in the world. After failing to install Epic Games Launcher over and over, I thought I might as well upgrade to Windows 11 to see if that would do anything. And yeah, that installation took way too long just to not fix the problem. This was an issue that I've never run into until this challenge, so I had no idea what to do until I found this YouTube tutorial that was uploaded yesterday, which instantly fixed the issue. So I was finally able to open up Fortnite, and this ThinkStation managed to pull almost 400 FPS while looking at the sky, and it still maintained between 100 and 150 FPS while building. So if you wanted to play some Fortnite at 1080p, you could probably play a competitive tournament and win money with this thing. I thought I might as well try Rocket League as well, and the P360 is getting around 180 FPS in the tutorial and 200 FPS in free play. So today's challenge was definitely a success, but if you want to see what happens when you put a $1,500 graphics card in a $32 PC, watch this video next.